Hello and welcome. This is Lora O'Brien, an Irish author and co-founder of the Irish Pagan School here in Waterford in Ireland. And today I'm going to walk you through a really quick guide, pronunciation guide for the Irish fairies. So different terms that are associated with the fairies here in Ireland and how to pronounce them. We are going to be focusing on the Irish ones because obviously they're the ones that people have issues with generally pronunciation on. We'll start with the Old Irish. We have, now again, I said in previous videos, the Old Irish pronunciation is a different language effectively than what I speak in Modern Irish or Gaeilge. And, but the approximation that we have for the pronunciation would be S-I Fada D would be Síth, and the same then S-I Fada TH Síth as well. They are the Old Irish terms. Now they actually mean, and they're just variations in spelling on the same term. Spelling was not standardized at all in Old Irish. It's only relatively recently that spelling has been standardized. But these would be terms for the fairy hill or mound specifically, rather than for the fairies themselves originally in Ireland. And they did come to mean later and more generally wondrous, enchanting, charming, delightful, etc., etc. Anything that is, you know, supernatural, definitely, but those all sound like very positive terms, but I'm just going to, you know, point out that when you actually look at the literal meaning of any of those things, they can end up quite dangerous for human encounters, really. So wondrous, you know, full of wonder, definitely. Enchanting, you know, would be enchanted, charmed, and full of delight. And any of those things could lead a person astray into the other world. And of course, that did often happen in the old folk tales here in Ireland. So in modern Irish, then we would have the terminology for Aes She, inhabitants of the mounds. So that would be AOS, a separate word, S-I Fada, Aes She. And within the modern Irish language, we would call a fairy now a Síog or just the she. And Síog would be like, it's kind of a diminutive. So a lot of modern Irish people who would be maybe believing in fairies or working with them or want to be a little bit more respectful to them would go with she rather than Síog. But a lot of us also use the spelling S-I-D-H-E, which is again another variation on the older Irish or maybe Middle Irish. And they all just are pronounced in the same way, and it's all she. And the reason that I particularly don't use the more intermediary or modern Irish would be because S-I Fada in the Irish language is also her. So it could get a little bit confusing when you're writing things down. But generally, I mean, obviously the context is important, so people would know what you were talking about within the context of speaking of the Aes She, the inhabitants of the mounds. So as I said, originally, fairy hills or mounds were called the she or sheath, and it came to mean then anything associated with and it wasn't just the mounds, the she was also the fairy palaces or halls or, you know, any kind of otherworldly encounter with a fairy location. And it was really those locations that were deemed wondrous and delightful and enchanting and charming and all the rest of it. And often the inhabitants would definitely present in that way until, you know, shit got real. Going by the old fairy tales and folk tales of Ireland. You didn't want to get drawn into these wondrous, enchanting, charming, or delightful locations by a member of the Aes She, because that would be a problem for a human for the most part. Not all the time, but for the most part. Now, technically the Tuatha Dé Danann are their own thing, but we have it here because it is a pantheon of gods that also are called the she. And that is because they have gone into the Sídhe Mounds in some of the mythology. And some of the leadership, such as the Dagda, would be very much associated with the Sídhe, the tribe of the Sídhe, or the people of the other world, I suppose, more technically correctly. So Tuatha Dé Danann is on the screen here, and it is a very well-known term in a lot of ways, but is also very, very mispronounced. And it's kind of grating when you hear it, a little bit grating. We do encourage people to use their Irish, but please don't say Tuatha or Tuatha Dé Danann. It's Tuatha. That's where the emphasis is, Tuatha. Or it kind of all runs together and it's just Tuatha Dé Danann. So again, the emphasis is important. Irish is a very lyrical language. So if you are looking to get that right, that's where you would pay attention. Tuatha Dé Danann. And it does mean Tuatha Dé would be, the etymology of this is a little bit complicated, but Tuatha Dé is often given by experts and scholars to refer to be an older terminology perhaps, and refer to a tribe of gods generally. And then tribe of the goddess Danú is Tuatha Dé Danann. And the goddess Danú is one that we often get questions about, and there isn't a lot of information on her. I have done a video over on my Lora O'Brien YouTube channel if you want to go and look that up. Now, all of this talking about the fairies and the Sídhe and all the rest of it, we don't always refer to them that way, just to make things a little bit more complicated and add an extra layer to it. We would tend to use honorifics or, generic terms for them. So some of those in Irish, the other crowd, the good neighbors, the good folk, the good people, all of those things are terms that we would use in English and more. But some of the Irish ones are Daoine Maithe, that's N-A-D-A-O-I-N-E, M-A-I-T-H-E, Daoine Maithe. And that means literally the good people. Daoine is people, Dinna is the singular of that, and Daoine is the plural, and Maith is good, and grammatically then it changes when you put it all together, Daoine Maithe. So that is the good people, and I am spelling it out because not everybody can see the screen. So if you can see the screen and you have the privilege of that and the benefit of that, then fair enough, but there are some people who don't, so please don't come at me in the comments. So Daoine Uaisle would be N-A-D-A-O-I-N-E, and then U-A-I-S-L-E. So both of those are three separate words. So again, Daoine Uaisle would be, Uaisle would be like noble or honored. I suppose it is very much an honorific. A Dhuine Uaisle would be a singular address for a respected person at a meeting, or even in a formal letter or something like that. So it is generally translated as the gentlefolk, as in, gentleman or gentlewoman, the gentlefolk, or the noble people would be, I suppose, a literal translation, but it's a very well known and well used term in the Irish language, Daoine Uaisle or a Dhuine Uaisle for the singular. And then for the third one, it's not specifically an honorific, but it is a general way of referring to them. I suppose it is respectful as well. An Slua Sí would be the fairy host, or sometimes given as like the immortal gathering, or other kind of flowery translations. But Slua means crowd, and then so it's the crowd of fairies basically, or the crowd out of the fairy mound, I suppose, technically. So in modern Irish, it's A-N, on, S-L-U-A, Slua, S-I father, she, An Slua Sí. And then there is an older form of spelling that you will often see as well. That is S-L-U-A-G-H and then S-I-D-H-E or S-I-F-A-D-H-E. And when I talked about not using the modern Irish of S-I-F-A-D for she, but still pronouncing it the same way, that is the term that I would most usually use. And I forgot to give it its own slide for some reason. S-I-D-H-E would be my usual spelling of she, but again, they're all pronounced the same way. So on Slua she would be the fairy host. Don't know if I'm giving you too much detail here or not enough, but if you do want more information, I've written a whole book on it. And just to give you some terminology as well, the book is called The Fairy Faith in Ireland, History, Tradition and Modern Pagan Practice. And you can get it on Amazon definitely at the moment, but it will be in good bookshops by the end of this year, hopefully. So on Creideamh Sí is the term for the fairy faith. Now that would be relatively speaking, a more modern term. The fairy faith was only really used in maybe the 1900s. So like the last 150 years. It's still old by certain people's terms, but for Irish folklore and study of history and language, that would be a relatively new one. But I like it. I like the fairy faith. It's not religious specifically. It is just about our belief, literal faith, our belief in the fairies here in Ireland, which is very much a part of our native culture. So this is a book, it's part of the Celtic Pagan Practice series, and it's a book that is written from within the Irish culture, obviously. So a lot of as it says, the history, tradition, but also the modern pagan practice. So there's a few spells and charms and other bits and pieces in there as well. Quite a few, actually. So on Creideamh Sí, so that would be A-N-C-R-E-I-D-E-A-M-H, and then she, S-I-F-A-D, on Creideamh Sí, the fairy faith. And then if you do want more information, you can go over to the irishpaganschool.com. And I'll put a link to this below, but it's irishpaganschool.com/courses/the-she, S-I-D-H-E. So again, links to all of this below, link to the book, link to the classes, and myself and Morgan Daimler have been teaching classes at the Irish Pagan School for quite a few years now. So you will find a whole rake of stuff under that category, which is why I give you the category link rather than the individual class links. If you want to learn more about the she and on Creideamh Sí, the fairy faith in Ireland. So I hope that's been useful to you. And if you want more pronunciation videos, let me know in the comments below, especially like terminology around the fairy faith or even gods and goddesses and stuff that has confused you, that you've seen written down, and that you would like to get pronunciation help or guidance on. So I might not be able to get to all of them, but we're always checking the comments for video ideas. So make sure that you are commenting below for your chance. You can also join the mailing list. Again, links to everything are below. So thank you for your time and your attention. Again, I hope that's been useful to you. This is Lora O'Brien from the Irish Pagan School. Slán go fóill, and I'll see you in the next video.